Welkom terug. Ons gesels vanoggend met die regspraktisyn Ashleigh Laurent oor 'n baie belangrike kwessie, natuurlik oor onbetaalde skoolfonds en die rippeleffek daarvan. Good morning, Ashleigh.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. I think let's start with how prevalent is this issue of unpaid school fees across the different provinces and the different types of schools?
Absolutely. It's a prevalent problem we're seeing in our fee-paying public schools and our independent schools alike, right? Even though inflation has slightly improved, interest rates have eased, we still see stagnant household incomes, right, and a high unemployment rate, which makes it very, very difficult to pay school fees in your fee-paying public schools and independent schools.
In short, times are tough.
Absolutely, definitely.
I was going to ask what socioeconomic factors contributed to this unwillingness, sometimes not just necessarily an unwillingness, sometimes it's like, I really can't. But whatever it is, what contributes? What are some of these factors that contribute to the fact that we are seeing less people paying school fees?
I think it's exactly that. It's, a high unemployment rate, and which makes it incredibly difficult for parents to pay these school fees. I think it's also the lack of understanding of your school fee agreements and the thought that you can't actually approach your school. You absolutely can. Have that proactive discussion with your school. So I think it's the lack of understanding around your school fee agreements, and from a school's perspective, a clear and concise agreement that parents don't necessarily understand what they're getting themselves into. And then we're faced with this huge debt.
And it all starts with that agreement, the annual school fees. It's set before you sign. You know what your responsibilities are. If you are in a position where you realize halfway through the year, for instance, my goodness, I won't be able to pay this, the full agreement amount for the year, what do you do? What's a couple of tips before you start working on it, things to remember?
So, from a fee-paying public school perspective, at the outset, read the agreements. If there's any confusion, reach out to your school. Approach your parents and say, hey guys, here's the fees for the year. Do you need help applying for a school fee exemption?
Communication is key.
Absolutely. It's a collaborative approach that is necessary on the part of both your school and your parents. So reach out to your school. Your fee-paying public schools, they'll have your annual exemption application. And that's often there's a misunderstanding that an exemption application is a one-off. It's an annual thing. Make sure you apply annually and timeously. And then reach out to your school and say, guys, I'm struggling. Do you have a payment method, or can I pay a certain amount at a certain time? So, I mean, it's imperative that parents pay these school fees, right? Because it's necessary to fill teacher posts, for the upkeep of infrastructure, for the safekeeping of the schools themselves, teachers and children, right? But it also goes to the quality of education. At the outset, have that proactive discussion. A collaborative approach is absolutely necessary.
If I'm a school, and I don't think you ever want to get to this, but if I'm a school and I've got a parent that just doesn't pay year after year, according to the law, what can I do?
Well, it's a different approach for both our independent schools and then our fee-paying public schools. The basis of the agreement for your independent schools, your private schools, right, is your fee agreements.
Yes.
TPN has a system where we would send a 20 business day letter of demand once a parent defaults to say, hello, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, please, can you pay your outstanding fees? They then reserve the right, once they've met all the requirements in terms of the South African Schools Act and the National Credit Act, to adversely list that parent. They can take judgment against that parent. And also they can attach movable and immovable property.
That's a private school.
Correct.
Yes.
That is for your independent, your private schools. From your fee-paying public schools, right, there's a few more requirements and hoops to jump. It's imperative to note that they can absolutely collect because it is a statutory debt. But once they've met the requirements, they have to determine, does that parent qualify for an exemption, first and foremost? If they have not applied or they failed to apply, they then send your 20 business day letter of demand. And thereafter, once they've failed to collect, 3 months thereafter, they reserve the right to take judgment, adversely list. They cannot attach immovable property. They may be in a position to attach movable property, but not immovable property. Imperative for both schools, your independent and your public schools, they cannot withhold school reports. Neither independent or your public schools can withhold school reports or transfer cards as a result of non-payment of school fees.
So it will never affect the child in school. Can a school at any stage say, please remove your kid from our school because of fees not being paid, or does this not affect the kid himself?
Look, I think it's imperative to note, right, if it ever gets to that point, our courts will always take the best interests of the child and the learner at heart. So they will absolutely ensure every procedure has been covered, every basis has been covered. In respect of your public schools, you cannot remove, suspend or expel a learner from your fee-paying public schools for public schools at all. In respect of your independent schools, it is possible once the correct term has been given to say, you have not paid these outstanding fees, please be advised, you have to remove your child after a term's notice. So they have to absolutely follow every procedure prior to that. They will take into consideration the best interests of the child, but it is possible in respect of our independent schools.
When it comes to fee-paying public schools, who determines the school fee, firstly? And what happens to that school's budget if they cannot get the money in that they've budgeted for the year?
It's a very good question. So in respect of your fee-paying public schools, it is set by the school themselves. They have an obligation to reach out to the school. So they'll do it in conjunction with your SGB, your school governing body.
Yeah.
And they will then, at the outset, at the start of the school year, announce to parents, this is the annual fee for the year. For the year, yeah. So it's imperative to do that. But then it's for the SGB to annually meet, to meet on a term-by-term basis or whenever they agree to meet to ensure that they are on track,
financially,
right?
Yeah.
Financially. So it's imperative to ensure that the SGB has a sound understanding as well from their side.
You were speaking earlier about applying for exemption, but I'm assuming schools also only have that much exemption that they can actually give.
Absolutely. I think it's also for the school to reach out to the provincial departments, right, and say, these are the number of applications we have for exemption. The provincial department will then, based on that, make a determination of how they can assist. So I think it's imperative to ensure that your school has that proactive discussion. Is your headmaster having that proactive discussion with the provincial departments of education to say, guys, this is the position we're in, this is the number of exemptions we give. They have to give a report also annually so that the provincial department has a number of ideas of how many people are applying for exemptions, how many parents are applying for exemptions.
Yes.
Wow, it's very interesting. Ashleigh, thank you so much for your time and for educating us this morning.
Thank you.
Dis Ashleigh Laurent. Dit is interessant. Dit bly seker maar jou verantwoordelikheid om seker te maak jy betaal daai skoolfondse. En as jy nie kan nie, soos ek gesê, daai gesprekke, oop kommunikasie met skole is baie belangrik. Bly geskakel net in ons tyd vir jou nuus, jou weer en jou finansies.